Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you guys here. Now, here's the thing, guys. Let's explore something new today. Not Bitcoin, something entirely new. Let's talk about a book that I've been reading the last couple nights. And, for years I've been interested in the subject of the paranormal, underground cities, I've explored the flat earth theory. I've looked into an awful lot of things over the years, starting when I was about in my 20s. I was only in my 20s when I started this search into these fascinating subjects that are unexplained, And so this book took my interest. And it fits in with a lot of things. Now, like I said, the last 2 nights I've been reading the book, and I'm about over 3/4 of the way through it. And I'm going to do a kind of like a synopsis of it for you. So let's get the chart started right here, and let's take a look at what is Baron Trump's marvelous underground voyage. Here's a picture of the so-called Baron, and it was a book written by Ingersoll Lockwood, I guess back in the 1800s, a long time ago. Now, people were different back then than they are today, One of the things I want to point out is back then, whenever anybody saw an alloy metal, maybe it was aluminum, could have been aluminum, or some other alloy, they would call it silver, because silver was what they were most familiar with. And I'm going to get to the reason why I told you guys that in a few minutes. Let's see if we can find another picture of the Baron here. This book, here's another picture of the Baron in the book. Let me see. We got others here. The book there were some illustrations in the book, Here's a little bit of the cover. Anyway, here's the thing about all this. The book, if you were to have a person from the 1800s, and if they were to go around in their environment, what were they used to back then? Horses and carriages, and they'd never seen technology before. Let's say that person was trying to describe as best they could if they were confronted with a superior technology. How would they try to describe that technology? Well, he talked about what he did. He went way up into Russia, and he found a passageway into the underworld, basically. This is a synopsis of what actually happened in the book. Now, if you read the book, he flourishes the details in the book a lot, trying to fit them in with his own perceptions. But what I'm doing right here is I'm going to cut to the chase of what the book is really about. And so this is not really a spoiler if you guys want to read the book. And the reason why it's not a spoiler is, as you read the book, look for the points that I'm going to lay out for you in the book and see how it fits my perception of what I read in the book and the actual book itself, and see how it fits together. And this might become very interesting for you. So he went and he found this cave, or well. He called it a well. The Giant's Well, it was called. And he found it because there was an old peasant woman that led the way to this underground passageway into the underworld. So he went way down into this giant's cave using what's called a block and tackle that he carried with him. Okay? And as he descended into this cave, he also knew he was an expert in the use of knots. And so he was able to actually do it all himself. Generally, 2 people operate a block and tackle. And what a block and tackle actually is something from the earlier times. It was a little rope and pulley system by which you could pull on the rope and you could lift 2-3 times your own weight. And it was like a little tiny block and pulley. That's what it was, And he used this block and tackle to lower himself and his dog down into this pit, deep, deep, deep into the earth. And when he got down to the bottom, where probably nobody would ever go, because, it's a deep well. I mean, people just don't go down into wells too often. When he got down to the bottom, he found a peculiar phenomenon. What he found was something he described like a funnel, like a big steel funnel. And it came down to a narrow little passageway that was designed, and the way it was designed was designed so that people couldn't get through it. But it was designed in a way so that water could go through or air could pass through. With a hole just specifically designed. But this was a very small man, this Baron Trump. And so by taking all of his clothes off and greasing himself, and tying a stone to his feet, a big heavy stone, dropping the stone down through first so it would pull him, he was able to let the stone's weight pull him down through this little hole, kind of squeezing him like a corset would squeeze, squeezing. I imagine the hole was probably only a few inches in diameter, but he was able to squeeze through it, and it scraped him as he was squeezing through, but he was able to wiggle and squeeze and pull his breath in and have this stone tugging him from the bottom. It was obviously made so that this hole was made small enough so humans couldn't get through. It was obvious that the makers of this put this in place so that humans couldn't get into their underground kingdom. But he did. He got through, and he got down into their underground kingdom. And when he was down there, he never met up with anybody. He walked through these tunnels and corridors that had a lighting system. They had a lighting system down there. And they also had walkways that they had built he describes the different walkways and stuff. He was obviously in somebody else's kingdom, not ours, not a human kingdom. So he wandered off down into this kingdom, and ultimately he came across this facility. Now, I'm calling it a facility. I don't believe that this particular facility, that the first place he came across, was inhabited by anybody that was like flesh and blood. But he described these beings he called the transparent people in this facility. And he associated them with living, breathing beings, but it was obvious that these were male and female. To me, reading the book, it was obvious that these were not living, breathing human beings, but artificial intelligent robots. Male and female robots that he came across. And he associated them with being people, and in the book, he associated them with, he gave them names and everything, but still, it was obvious to me that these transparent ones, what he described on their chest, they had something that he described as a fan. And you could move the fan, right? And it would reveal this transparency, a transparent plate. And inside the transparent plate, he said you could see their heart. And they had a timer on the heart. It was obvious to me that he was a man that didn't understand technology, it was obvious to me what he was describing was the battery system as their heart. He said there was a red glowing ember on their heart, and he was obvious to me that he was describing a switch, an on-off switch. He said that when the timer ran out, in other words, the battery would run low on these robots, that they would have to go rest. And he said special beds would fold out of the walls where they would rest. And this was obvious to me that they were recharging, these recharging units to recharge the robots. And there was male and female robots, probably representations of like a human. Like, he could obviously tell the difference between the male robots and the female robots. And when the lights would go out in the facility, these beings would go automatically to their places of rest, I guess to recharge. And then the lights would come back on and they would all get up and start working again. So he didn't stay there very long. And for me, it's for obvious reasons why he didn't stay there any particular length of time. is because who was there really to talk to or anything? It was just a facility with automated robots that were continually doing some sort of a job, some sort of a chore that they had to do, you know, from reading the book. Now, who knows what kind of a chore that they were actually working at? I don't think it was apparent to him, but he flourished this story and made them into like a civilization, but he didn't stay there very long. And he left, because it was obvious to me it was a facility, and he was just being an observer of the things that he saw. So he marched on further into his journey, and he came across deeper into these subterranean world. And he came across another civilization of something that he called the ant people. And this is how he describes them. Long, spindly arms and legs, with long, thin fingers. Big bulbous eyes, an extremely large head, their bodies were rather frail looking, like, not real heavy set or anything, and he called them the ant people. From the description of these beings that he gave in his book, I would associate them with the beings that we have, terminology that we've used, that we call the Greys. And so, in the alien lore, I should say, so he spent some considerable time with these ones. And he liked them very much, and they welcomed him, and evidently welcomed him into their community, and he said that they used their fingers and their toes for touch a lot, and that their eyesight was poor, according to him. And so then what happened is in their community of these people, they had an area or a city, what he called a city. And he described the city as of being made of silver. Now, this is where we get into the part where, near the first of this story, I told you that in the 1800s or whatever, people were most used, if they saw a silvery metal, even if it was an alloy, say it was aluminum or it was some other alloy, but it displayed a silver color, they would call it silver. Because that was the metal that they were most familiar with silver, the white metal. And so it didn't necessarily mean that the city was made out of silver, but he said the city was made out of silver. He said the walkways were silver, the benches were silver, the seats were silver, the walls were silver, the roof was silver. This means that the entire structure was made out of a silvery metal. It almost sounds to me that when he was with these beings he called the ant people, that their city was a ship, a silver ship. And he goes on to describe it as being circular, this ship, and gigantic in proportions. It sounds to me like he's describing a parked, underground, enormous spaceship that's everything inside it is almost like it's seamlessly put together, or made or fashioned from silver. And he described them as being the most wonderful metal workers on Earth. I found this very interesting, and I read it up until that point. Now, I don't really know what happens next because I'm about 3/4 of the way through the book. But it seems to me that these things he found on his underground journey kind of fit in with different other stories that we've had about what we call as so-called extraterrestrials, But nobody's ever conclusively proven if these beings are actually real or if they're just fiction or whatever. And I found this just to be another piece of evidence, this book, to me, as part of a larger puzzle. And I thought you guys would find it interesting to hear my summation of what I read in this particular book. And, well, that's the show for today. And now, I'll tell you guys what. you can go out and you can pick up this book. You can actually listen to it for free on the internet. They have the whole book. If you, I'll try to put the link in the description so you can listen to it. It's what they call LibriVox recording or whatever. It's free to listen to. And it's a very interesting book. But look for the points that I made out, in the actual story. And he tells a really grand story. It's actually an enjoyable book to listen to. So we'll catch you guys on the next show, and I hope you enjoyed this show. And I haven't done a show that deals in the paranormal subject matter for a very long time, and I figured it was about time I did something in this subject matter, because Bitcoin has been drifting along around 10,400, 10,500 for a long time now, and there's nothing really interesting happening there. Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.